Hi. As our last topic, we will go into the class system in JavaScript and the module system. Let's start with classes. So you already know classes from Java, and JavaScript classes are not exactly the same, but similar. And so let's just start using classes and reorganize this code so that it's not just a script at the top level with a bunch of functions. It is more structured than that. And let's start simple and slow with the low-hanging fruits. For instance, this sleep method or function. It's really just a wrapper around the Windows set timeout thing, as we learned when we were looking at promises. But it should be in its own place. So we are going to create a class with a static method called sleep. And it's functionally the same. It's just a place where we are putting the sleep method. And I'm going to call this class utils for the lack of a better name. And it's going to be a static method. And it's going to be called sleep. And it's going to do exactly what the sleep function is doing. And here I can just fix the notation, but other than that, it's exactly the same. There you have it. Now, the utils class has a static method, and notice that we went from the syntax that the lambda syntax or the anonymous function syntax or the function syntax that automatically returns to one that has braces here, the method syntax that I need to be explicit. I need to say return this promise. It won't be automatically returned for me. But other than that, it's exactly the same. And anywhere I use sleep, I can start to use utils sleep. And there's only one instance here, really. So I can say utils.sleep. And now I can get rid of this function. So I just encapsulated the sleep function in its own class with a static method. It's more a namespacing issue here. We are just putting the thing under the namespace utils. That's easy. Let's apply the same concept, the same idea, to many other of these methods that are really just standalone methods. For instance, new game, and move, and cheat. They are equivalent to static methods in a class. We could just create a class to namespace these guys. So all of these, they tell a similar story. They have a cohesion to them. All these functions are like actions in a controller. In general, you are going to see that in this process of refactoring our application, we are going to rediscover the design that exists in the server. And some things will be different, like, for instance, here, the controller will be handling events that are like clicking events, let's say. So move is the function that is called when you click on a light. And now that will be a controller it will be an action in the controller. But in general, the idea is the same. It's just handling an event that is coming in. And in the case of the server, the event is an HTTP request. And in the case of the client, the event is someone clicking on something. But the concept is the same. It is a controller. So here, I'll create a class called games controller. And again, it will have a bunch of static methods. The first of which is going to be, let's say move, why not? So it's a static method called move. And it is asynchronous. So you need to say static async move. Let me just remove this arrow. And now it is semicolon. And so this is a class. And we can do similar things to cheat and to new game and even to pull, why not? So I'm just going to fast forward while I do this. Okay, so I am done with the refactoring. I transformed all those top level functions into static methods of the games controller. I'm also going to rename this guy. I'm not happy with this name. I mean, it's the games controller, so the only thing I can create here is a game. So new game is kind of redundant. I'm going to call it create. Now that I renamed all those functions, I need to change every place where those functions are called. And in many cases, the places are obvious because IntelliJ is telling me. So for instance, new game here. Now it is games controller create. And poll is games controller poll. And here the same thing. But there are more places where these functions are called, and we are not seeing them here. They are the SVG. So here in the SVG is where we bind the buttons. For instance, here the new game button, it is here, and it is calling the new game method or the new game function here. And we need to change the SVG so it wires into the right method now. So we are going to look for new game, and we are going to change that to read controller, or really games controller dot create. And I'm going to do that the same thing for all the other buttons. So I'm going to fast forward as I do that. Okay, so I'm done with the renaming. And yeah, so with that, I have extracted the controller. Let's take a moment to see if we still have a working game. And we do. Cheat, create new game, it all works. And you can tell that the actions are different. If you look on the lower left on my browser, it says that it's going to run the script games controller move, and here it's going to cheat in the games controller, and here games controller create. So we extracted a controller. Now we have an object-oriented controller here. Oh, and there is another action that could go into the controller, and that is the action that happens when the page has finished loading, this guy. So I will extract that into something that lives in the game's controller. I'm going to call it load. And it's going to be another static method, asynchronous, and it's going to do this guy. Oh, and there's something important here. I don't want to call this function. I want to pass it to the event listener that will call the function. So I don't want the parentheses there. And I want to move it down because I want the event to only occur. I only want this. I only want to bind this event listener after the game's controller has been created. Now I can come back to the browser and refresh, and we can see that the game still works just fine. That is fine, but so far all we've done is just give these guys names. We are just namespacing static methods. Now we want to move on and do more interesting things. That is the topic of our next video.